So you saw The Curse and you did what I did and started frantically looking for YouTube videos explaining the damn thing to you. You're probably in one of two camps. Either you hated it and you're wondering where all these rave reviews came from. This is a bizarre, awkward, frustrating experience start to finish. Or you were at the very least interested by it and you want to make sense of that ridiculous ending. Well, we're going to get into it. Now, if you just want to make sense of that crazy ending, jump to the end because we're going to cover it there. I'm going to start off telling you my experience with this show. I started out hating it, and now it's probably one of my favorite shows to have come out recently. The entire journey is because my expectations changed. The Curse has to be watched a very specific way. It's not a normal story where it's all driven by the plot, the themes, and then the character development, and then there's a nice, neat resolution where everything comes together at the end. This is driven by style. It's driven by depth of themes, certainly, but they're a little harder to get to. And once you start to look at the show for what it's supposed to be and let yourself go a little bit of what your expectations are for good television, you have the potential to have a very good time with this and get something out of it you just can't out of other shows. The first thing you want to look for are uncomfortable moments. This is what the show is known for. And seriously, this is something I hated until I looked at it the same way I would look at a horror movie or a comedy where I'm looking to get a very specific feeling out of it. Cringe is now by itself a new category, and it's somewhere in between the two of those. If you have a brain that is equipped to navigate society at its most basic level and you know how to hold yourself accountable to navigate social taboos and to not embarrass yourself or ask too much of other people, all of these lines you have to walk to engage in society, many of these scenes are going to make you feel restless, itchy, and irritable. It's a mechanic that's used a whole bunch of ways. It's not just cringe for the sake of it, but they actually kind of paint the scenes in very interesting ways that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. Sometimes it adds suspense. Sometimes it adds to the tragedy of the moment. It makes you feel more for the characters. Sometimes it's a way that borders on absurdist horror. And sometimes it's just because the writers wanted you to squirm in your seat. If you've watched the hyper absurd cringe comedy that's populated Adult Swim since the late 90s, you're going to be familiar with this. If not, I would just tell you to YouTube search Too Many Cooks for the cleanest singular summary I can give of what this type of humor is about. But we're the types of characters you would see in that genre, like Steve Brule, Tim and Eric Andre, were about as subtle as dead deer on the freeway. In this show, the mechanic of cringe actually gets applied to a story with events you are supposed to care about. It's Emma Stone's character shamelessly trying to force the approval of the local artist, both for obvious personal gain, but also probably for a little bit of her own personal validation. It's Ben Safdie's character, Dougie, driving his date on the freeway, telling her the story about how his wife died in an accident where he was drinking, where he then makes her get the breathalyzer out of his dashboard so he can test himself to see if he's good. It's the finale with Rachel Ray, where the camera never pulls away from Nathan and Emma's smiling faces, and the result is a blend of empathy and tragedy, embarrassment and horror that I've really never experienced fused together. It's like Bob Ross discovered a new color and we get to watch him try it out in his clouds, his rivers, and his mountaintops. And for the moment, there are no mistakes, just happy accidents. The second thing you want to look for is commentary. Some of you want a simple story with a purpose you don't want to have to work to unpack. While you can watch this just for the basic plot and the bizarre scenes, and I think that's enough for some people to stand on its own, the show is definitely elevated if you do try to tease out some of the commentary. I am decidedly not a commentary guy because it's never done well. It's always either insufferable blunt messaging where good storytelling takes a back seat, or it's vague abstractions the filmmakers themselves aren't even sure about, or it's so well hidden that there's no hope for any viewer to get there without a treasure map. The Curse finds nice middle ground where you're always pretty sure of what they're trying to get at, but not quite. So there's an incentive to kind of dig around. You feel like you're always on the cusp of realizing something about the story or the characters. In every scene, there's a familiar type of person being represented. There's shameless self-promoters, obnoxious creative types, white liberal allies, the regular people who are confused by white liberal allies, all in a way that you've never seen. And the tension, drama, comedy, and cringe can all easily be attributed to shock for entertainment's sake, but it can also be attributed to the people who put this thing together as deliberate commentary about culture, media, and relationships. Now, the third thing you want to watch this for is for the characters. Everyone in the show is fantastic at doing what they're supposed to be doing. Again, you're not going to get on the Disney teacups expecting the Matterhorn. If you come in with the right expectations, you can get a lot out of the way these characters develop and operate. And when everybody's raving about how good the acting is in relation to these roles, it's because the characters are really good at doing what they're supposed to be doing. Now, whether you found that interesting or moving is a different story. Emma Stone and Nathan Fielder in the show exist to lampoon HGTV type reality stars and reality power couples at large, and they capture the stark difference between how those people want to be seen and who they really are. Both Emma and Nathan are overly smiley and painfully inoffensive in front of the screen, but they don't just turn into our ideas of television industry monsters when the camera goes off. The performative facades extend into their lives as they constantly posture for approval, like some child eager to be told they're a good boy by a disappointed parent. At every turn, we aren't sure if they're motivated by a real desire to help, a less noble desire to be seen as helpful, or a more malicious desire to simply promote themselves at the expense of other people. Some of the more cringy scenes come from Nathan's character, hovering around the immigrant family he believes cursed him with that awkward white guy vibe turned up to 11. What is he doing? Is he genuinely trying to make friends? Does he really think he's helping? Or is he just there to eliminate the curse so he can get back to doing what he's doing? And I don't think we're supposed to know outright, and I don't think there's one deliberate answer, because that really doesn't work for ourselves in our own lives. That theme of ambiguity of motives is also expressed differently between the two characters. They're both very fleshed out as real people with their own motives, their own hangups, their own flaws, and their own journey. Emma is the child of rich parents of questionable morals, and she's eager to make her own way and possibly atone for past mistakes. But she still expresses contempt for her husband. She expresses her ambition, and she shows how she's willing to control and manipulate him and others to get what she thinks she has coming to her. Nathan plays the submissive goof who's emasculated continuously in both subtle and very overt ways, whose frustration and anger can only be funneled into that awkward white guy philanthropy vibe and support for the higher power that he has deemed is his wife. The bottom line is, whether this is your jam or not, there is a lot to unpack here, and that is a rare comment to make on anything related to television or filmmaking today. All right, so let's break down that ending. The first part, which at this point I already had my expectations tweaked, I think, to the vibration that the show was on. So I was kind of ready for anything. And when I go into horror movies, I do something similar. I'm not looking for what I look for in normal movies when I go to see a horror movie. I settle for what they're trying to do. Sometimes it's jump scares that are effective. Sometimes it's really creepy tropes. Sometimes it's like over-the-top gore, suspense, violence, whatever. And that's kind of what I was looking for here. I was like, okay, just give me the weirdest thing you can come up with. Let's do it. So first off, the Rachel Ray scene I thought was brilliant, because at that point, the cringe was turned all the way up. And not just in a like, this is really bizarre type of way, but you could feel for what they were going through. They had all their hopes staked on this thing. This was their first representation to the rest of the world with a celebrity. And you saw Rachel Ray not only like neg them repeatedly, just completely bring negativity to their show, ask harsh questions, not support it at all, but then ignore them through the rest of the bit while you just see their smiling, hollow faces in the background trying to stay brave and engage, because that's what you have to do. And in that time, you're trying to think, okay, what are they thinking? What are their emotions? You're waiting for the next scene. So there's a lot of secondhand embarrassment. Anybody who has had something big they've invested a lot into can relate to that feeling of it kind of falling apart in real time in a big way in front of a lot of people. I think that's a very universal thing. And it was to the point where like I was like, oh my God, what am I looking at? It got creepy. It got kind of horrific. And then there were points where I started laughing. It went on so long. I was going through this like roller coaster of the experience. It was quite an experience considering it was one scene. So again, looking at the show the way you should be trying to engage with the show, it does some things that are just not done this well anywhere else. And again, that might mean something to you, it might not. So then you jump to Emma Stone's character talking to Nathan. He's going to give away the property to the immigrant family. She's obviously not happy about it, and she's doing that fake smile thing, you can tell. And then he goes on that weird thing talking about the producers and how it taught the Jews to laugh at the Holocaust or something like that. So this is back to like Nathan kind of being a drag and her not really having it. They have the weird scene where the guy tries to give her a dream catcher and she sends it back. Again, cringe. That in my family, that's just something you don't do. So at every turn, I'm like, oh my God, like what's going on here? And then you're like, more bad juju. So at this point, I'm starting to put together that the curse is kind of related to minorities, the natives, the locals, the immigrant family. And it's like, okay, is this in like these crazy white people's head that they're being cursed by these other people? Again, ambiguity in the show, because they showed the little girl's powers, but not in a real clear and concise way. And then I started to think like, are they even needy? Because they took the guy from Captain Phillips, the I'm your captain now. And he kind of has that affectation of like a hungry Ethiopian. And all of that with where they're living, with them selling drinks in the parking lot, you think, oh, this must be an impoverished family. But he seems to be okay. His kids seem to be doing well in school. He's present. He's asking pragmatic questions. It seems like he has his shit together. So then I started asking, like, am I the racist here? Am I the one making assumptions? So this starts to carry more and more weight. I'm like, okay, is the twist going to be that these crazy white people are cursing themselves, or they themselves are actually the source of all these problems? That kind of started to track. So when you think of what goes on with Emma Stone waking up and Nathan Fielder is floating in the ceiling, first of all, I'm afraid of heights anyways. So I got the heights and my palms started sweating because he's up on the ceiling ready to fall. But then I also got this secondary anxiety because I knew where it was going. I was like, if gravity's reversed and you go outside, you float away. Now this hit me especially hard because I told my wife, this was actually a fear of mine as a kid. I was like 6, 7. What happens if gravity turns off? I learned about the solar system and gravity and how it keeps us on Earth. Well, if it turns off, everything just spins off of Earth out into space. And my feet were wet. My palms were sweaty the entire time. And of course, it's made funny because instead of engaging with the horror of what's going on, they're trying to keep a brave face, treat it like a problem to be solved. It looked like an improv bit. Emma Stone's on all fours, pregnant, doing the shit with the vacuum because he's convinced it's something with the pressure and she has to stay away, but he needs her help. And it got like really bizarre really fast. And that's kind of taking the edge off. And then as he ends up outside and he ends up in the tree, finally they get the firefighters, they cut the tree and he flies off into space. And then she's giving birth through a C-section. And that's the end of the show. So I think my perspective was kind of validated. So if you look to the episode before, the one before that, where Nathan just commits, makes himself completely subservient to his wife, Emma Stone's character, this is how that conversation went. There's not some curse, I'm the problem. It's not magic, it's me. I'm a bad person and I've been dragging you down with me. I'm all in on you. I'm all in on Whitney. Whatever it takes, I'll do it. And you won't even have to tell me anymore because I know, and I won't be guessing because I know you, baby. If you didn't want to be with me and I actually truly felt that, I'd be gone. I'd disappear. You wouldn't have to say it. I would feel it and I would disappear. So remembering that line as you see what happened to him right after she had her last bit of fill, being irritated about giving the property away, him saying, oh, we could be poor. You know, we could live in this model. She wasn't having any of that. And she woke up the next morning and he's on the ceiling. He felt it. There was nothing left of him, no gravity, no substance. And he just flew off into space. And honestly, I kind of like it. As a complete miniseries, I think it works well. I don't know what the hell they're going to do for a second season. I could see it being an anthology where they do this type of stuff with other stories. And then it's always like, okay, is it going to be as good if they bring in different people? I can't see them doing it with just Emma Stone's character by herself. And I don't know how they would bring back Nathan from what they put him through in the show. So I don't know, but I loved it. I had a great time unpacking all of this, and some of those scenes, the human experience kind of stick with me because it's an expression that I had not seen or felt in cinema or TV. So again, people hate it. They're frustrated. I don't say this often. I think it's as brilliant as the critics are saying. I think it just takes most people the long way around in order to come to that conclusion on their own.